You probably know someone like this. Maybe it's even you. They're the person in the room who watches everything, who laughs at the right moment, who remembers tiny details about people they've only met once, who shows up for others in ways that feel almost unsettling in their precision. They seem to know you, and yet, if you try to get close to them, really close, you start to feel something. A wall, not rude or cold, just a ceiling on how deep things ever go. People who don't trust anyone are not who you think they are. The stereotype is a paranoid loner, the cynic who rolls their eyes at everything, the person who assumes everyone has an agenda. And sure, that exists, but the psychology underneath chronic distrust, it almost never looks like that. It looks like someone who is extraordinarily good at relationships on the surface. Someone who gives, adapts quickly, makes you feel seen while quietly making sure you never get close enough to hurt them. It's architecture built over years. What's often misinterpreted about trust is that it's not a personality trait or something you're born with or without. Trust is a conclusion the nervous system draws based on evidence it collected before you were old enough to question it. John Bowlby, the psychologist who developed attachment theory, spent decades documenting how the earliest relationships in a person's life essentially become their brain's working model for all future relationships. Like a neural template, the question, is it safe to depend on people, gets answered really early on. And once the nervous system has an answer, it defends that answer. So when someone grows up in an environment where the people who were supposed to be safe weren't, where care was inconsistent and love came with conditions that kept changing, perhaps the person you ran to for comfort was also the source of the threat. The brain doesn't only conclude those specific people were unsafe, it concludes something much broader. People in general are unsafe, and that conclusion gets carried forward into every friendship, every relationship, every moment where someone gets just close enough that the old information starts screaming. What happens inside someone who doesn't trust? And I want you to really sit with this as a permanent, exhausting negotiation between what they want and what they believe is possible. Because people who don't trust anyone almost always want that connection. The need doesn't suddenly vanish. The capacity for love doesn't shrink. What does shrink is the belief that letting someone in is survivable. Living with that mindset every day can get exhausting. You meet someone you genuinely like, and there's this brief, almost electric moment of hope, and people who've experienced this will recognize this instantly. Something in you starts looking for the catch. Your brain has already run this before, and it knows or thinks it knows exactly how it ends. So it starts scanning for inconsistency, the small lie for the moment they show you who they really are. And the cruelest part is that the scanning itself can create distance that looks to the other person like disinterest, like you don't care, when the reality is quite the opposite. Psychologist Jennifer Fra coined the term betrayal trauma to describe what happens when the source of harm in someone's life is also someone they fundamentally depended on, like a parent, partner, or it could even be your best friend. What makes this kind of trauma distinct is that the brain, in order to preserve the attachment, since cutting off attachment to a caregiver is not something a child can survive, actually suppresses the awareness of betrayal. You learn to not know what you know and explain it away. See, when you do that long enough, you stop trusting your own perception, which is maybe the most insidious part of all of this. Because now the distrust doesn't just point outward, it points inward. Am I reading this wrong? Am I too sensitive? Maybe I'm the problem. People who grew up having their perceptions systematically invalidated, being told they were dramatic, too much, imagining things, often become adults who are both hyper-vigilant about others and deeply uncertain about themselves. They read rooms with almost frightening accuracy and then immediately second-guess everything they just read. That's not a character flaw. It's just what can happen when someone's internal compass got deliberately scrambled. The behavioral patterns that emerge from all of this are fascinating and heartbreaking in equal measure. Some people become avoidant. They keep relationships deliberately shallow. They're the ones who get weird when things start getting serious, who pick fights right when intimacy is peaking. Some go the opposite direction and become anxiously attached, hyper-vigilant through proximity, always monitoring, always testing, never quite settling. And then there are people who oscillate between the two, pulling someone close and then panicking and pushing them away, and then feeling devastated that they left. From the outside, it can look like manipulation, like they're playing a game. But for them, it feels like drowning. What I think matters most about people who don't trust is how loyal they are when they do let someone in. How ferociously loyal. Because deciding to trust someone for a person who has every neurological reason not to is not a small thing. It's an act of profound courage that most people who haven't lived this way will never fully grasp. When someone who has spent their whole life protecting themselves decides you're worth the risk, they don't do that casually. In fact, with everything they have, which is also why the losses hit so hard, since it was never just this relationship, but the whole argument they made to themselves that this time would be different. Rebuilding trust, real trust, not the act of it, is slower than the person doing it wants it to be. It doesn't happen because someone promises they won't hurt you. Promises mean relatively little in the eyes of someone calibrated to expect betrayal. It happens through something called earned security, a concept in attachment research that describes a process where repeated, consistent, safe experiences slowly begin to revise the brain's working model. Key word there being revise. What that actually looks like in practice is someone showing up the same way on a normal weekday as they did when they were trying to impress you. It's the accumulation of small, unremarkable moments of reliability that the brain slowly, reluctantly starts to file differently. It's not supposed to be a grand gesture, just someone being exactly who they said they were again and again until the nervous system stops waiting for the other shoe. And the word slowly is important. Healing from this is not linear. There are moments of real openness followed by sudden withdrawal that can feel from the outside like regression. When that happens, it's the old architecture holding up under new weight, figuring out whether it can bear it. If you're watching this and recognizing yourself, not in a comfortable intellectual manner, but in a specific, slightly uncomfortable way of being seen, then I want you to know something. The way you love underneath all the protection is not small. The capacity for a connection you carry in spite of everything that told you it wasn't safe is not something most people could sustain. You built something extraordinary to survive, and you did just that. What comes next is the slower, stranger work of figuring out which walls you actually still need. If you're interested in exploring these ideas further, I've put together a collection of books that dive deeper into psychology, human behavior, and independent thinking. You can find the full list on my bookshop page through the link in the description and pinned comment. And if you enjoy content like this, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Also, hit the join button if you want to help keep these psychology deep dives going. I appreciate all the support and can't thank you guys